Good morning. Welcome to Let's Get Growing Facebook Live. I am your host, Jeff Mason. I forget to say that most of the time, but there you go. We're in the greenhouse again today, although it's feeling like spring outside. But a question came, and somebody was asking about their rubber plant has gotten really, really tall and is falling over. And they wanted some advice on what to do with it. So, I said there's a way, staking it up is probably the easiest way. Bamboo stakes are the easiest and cheapest way to do it. But, when you get into a tall houseplant like that, because they're not sort of in ideal conditions, the trunks aren't as developed as they would be if they were growing outside, in a natural setting. So they do get top heavy, especially if you've had, a couple of times of very low light that makes a thin stem. It doesn't really fix itself. So we're going to look at one thing that you can do to lower the plant, get rid of that heaviness, and still save the piece you're taking off. So we're going to be talking about air layering. And then also, a few weeks back, we talked about Amaryllis, and we talked about the waxed ones. And we had this guy as a sample of the waxed ones. I just thought I'd like to revisit it. This is its third flower spike, so that's amazing. It has been blooming for at least 6 weeks, maybe longer. So, the question always is, what do you do with it after? Really hasn't, for what it's for, it doesn't owe us anything. You can see that it's tried to grow some leaves and they've fallen off and they've dried up. But if you look below those, there is a whole crop of leaves right here. You can see by the wax that the bulb has shrunk considerably, because I can actually move the wax on it. So we're actually going to take the wax off, have a look at what the bulb is doing. And if we think it's salvageable, we're going to pot it up and see what happens. So I haven't done it before with these waxed bulbs, but that question always comes up. What do you do with that waxed Amaryllis after the fact if you want to save it? So we're going to start with that. I'm going to take off this metal stand, and it was probably just pushed into the bulb, which isn't going to hurt it. So we'll get that out. So there we go. It's just a stand, easy, nothing too exciting. And the wax has, because the bulb has shrunk and used up a lot of its resources, the wax is going to come off really easily. We can actually just peel that wax off. Now let's see what they've got. They've got the bulb. I don't know if that's no, it's like a little latex boot, basically, I guess. Like a piece of a rubber glove. And while the bulb has shrunk, it's still very firm. And look at this. Where the roots were cut off the base plate, there was enough base plate left there that there's a whole crop of roots starting right around. So really, there is nothing wrong with this bulb. What I would do with it, if we want to try to save it, we're going to get rid of that last couple of flowers. They got a couple of days left. Put them in a vase. Amaryllis make amazing cut flowers. Then nip off that one leaf there. No, that other leaf is just going to come off. There's the two old flower stalks there. So we can actually, I think, go right ahead and pot that up just like it was any other Amaryllis, because there's lots of new root growth. The bulb feels great. I don't know what to do with that. Throw that in the garbage, I guess. Melt it down, make a candle or something. So we can just go ahead and pot this. Remember, when you're potting Amaryllis, leave about 1/3 of the bulb visible. And this was a big bulb, so if we can get it back to good health, it could produce 3 spikes this time next year. So there we go. We'll give it a watering. We'll see what happens. Great experiment on what to do with our waxed Amaryllis. Now that was a big bulb. You can get the waxed Amaryllis in all different sizes. So the little skinny ones, may not have enough left in them to really perform. But this one feels like it does. So should be great. So
I have a quick question about Amaryllis.
yeah.
Laura's Amaryllis was very, very slow to grow.
Yeah.
Do they need a lot of sun and warmth?
That's hard to say, because I've experienced the same thing with varieties as well. I'm just going to go off camera for a second. I'm going to grab 2 plants and we're going to compare. These 2 Amaryllis were planted the exact same day. They sat beside each other in the greenhouse. This one got really tall. It's a little top heavy, so they sat beside each other in the greenhouse. Their care was virtually identical. Their temperatures were the same. Their light was the same. Everything was exactly the same, and this is the stage this one's at. And that one's been blooming for 3 weeks. So, you know what? I don't have the perfect answer for that question, because I've seen bulbs, Amaryllis bulbs, do both. Take forever or shoot right away under the same conditions. I don't think they were too cool. They were in the greenhouse. Minimum temperature of where they were sitting, about 15 degrees Fahrenheit, or Celsius, I mean, sorry. Full sun for what sun we've had. So lots of light anyway. They've both done very well, but they're at very different growth stages. So I think you just have to be patient. From variety to variety, it would be interesting to see if we had planted, 3 Rudolphs and they took this long. That would be interesting to see. But there's 2 that were done the same day.
Doug was saying that he bought 2 of the Barbados Amaryllis that you showed on the seed.
Oh yeah, Barbados, yeah.
Showed last season, and they were spectacular in December and January.
Barbados is one of the newer varieties, and it is a winner for sure. It's a stunning Amaryllis. And there are some beautiful ones out there, and new ones coming along all the time. And of course, general stores and stuff, you're probably going to get red, pink, white. Go to a good garden center. There's quite a wide selection. There's probably over about 25 different varieties available to garden centers in Ontario from our wholesalers. So there really can be lots to choose from. So, all right, we're going to move on, and we're going to look at air layering. Now, please excuse my sad rubber plant. It's been sitting very neglected, but it's a good example of, how do we resurrect this guy. It does have lots of shoots down at the base. It has bits of new growth coming. So I've got good growth at the top. I've got new shoots coming at the top, but I've got all this empty space. So we could do a couple of things. We could just cut it back up here and we'd get some. That would encourage some buds to shoot off the old stem. But we could try taking cuttings. But when you get into plants that are woody plants, and you can see down here, this ficus is getting woody. Important to remember that ficus like this, like the rubber plant, like the fiddle leaf fig, like the Ficus benjamina, these things are all giant trees where they grow naturally. So we just have the babies here, and even if they get big, well, there's nothing like what they'll be in real life. But with all this space between where we have buds coming and where we have shoots, why not take that shoot and we'll try doing some an air layer, which is a really easy way of rooting plants that are trickier to root. Now you may take a cutting here of this nice good green growth and it may root out for you, but you know, you risk the chances. Air layering leaves the cutting on the plant until it roots, so you get a much better odds of you weren't kidding, Laura, when you said you were almost out of blades here.
Go further.
It doesn't want to go further, but oh, it's actually stuck there. That'll work. Anyway, what you want to do when you're air layering is you need to get under the bark and reveal sort of the underlying tissue, but not cut too deep into the stem. So if we're going to air layer this guy, let's take this stem here. It's probably the easier one to work with. We're going to look at where a node was right here, the new shoot right there, the leaf base here. So this is where roots are going to grow from. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take our knife and we're going to very carefully just cut around. Now with ficuses you got to remember their sap is latex, so you might want to wear gloves for this one. In fact, I think I will put gloves on. I've got some right here. Their sap can be an irritant, so please remember that. Don't lick your fingers. Don't touch your face or eyes when you're working with them. The latex doesn't usually bother me, but you know what? It's very sticky. So let's put some gloves on. So we've made our first little cut. Then we're going to cut just below that, about a ½ an inch or so. Alright, so we've got two cuts about a ½ an inch apart. Then we're going to make a vertical cut in that. And if all works out, we should be able to remove just that top layer of tissue and expose that bit of tissue there. It's a little finicky, but it's coming. Now the neat thing about air layering, as I said, you can do this on plants that are trickier to root, but you can also do it on hardy trees and shrubs. And you can do this out in the garden if you want to increase, you know, a vine you've got, if you want to increase a shrub you've got. Oh, we got a little bit more out there. So you can use it for a lot of different plants.
Is the cut between the two nodes?
Basically, yeah. Yeah. A little deeper. There we go, we're getting that little cut there. Get that bit of bark off. So we're just taking the bark layer, almost there. And we need to expose this because this is where our roots are going to come from. There we go. So now we've cut a ring right around there. We're not too deep, but we've got the wound there, the bark's gone. Now we can, you can see that where I put my hand behind
Yep.
there. So there we go. So after that, now we've got to decide, we've got to get something around there for roots to grow into. So if you want, and it's not a necessity, but you can always take some rooting powder. You don't need much. Rooting powder is an interesting beast. A little bit works well. Too much rooting powder actually does the reverse and inhibits rooting. So you can take a little bit of rooting powder there. We can sort of dust the cut with it. Not a necessity, but can help. Then when we've got our open cut there, we're going to take some clear saran wrap. It's good dollar store Glad wrap. And then we're going to take some sphagnum moss that we've been soaking. So this is a good quality sphagnum moss. It's not dried up craft store junk. Good quality sphagnum moss that's used for orchid growing and other tropical plant growing. We've been soaking it. We're going to squeeze it out. How much water that holds, it's amazing. And we're going to make a nice ball of moist sphagnum. Now, probably the easiest way to do it, we're going to lay that moist sphagnum on the saran wrap, and then we're going to take that whole concoction and we're going to wrap it around the trunk where we've made the cut. Okay? So pack it in there. Get rid of some of that excess. Tuck it up there. Then you can take your saran wrap, get it on there nice and tight. And basically what you've created is a little rooting chamber there. Now you can hold this in several ways. If you've got good elastic bands, you can cut them and use them to tie. I thought I might try some electrical tape because it stretches and it's more or less waterproof as well. So we're going to wrap some electrical tape around there. bottom as well. It's important that this be snug because you don't want the moss to dry out. This is going to take a few weeks. Now I got this loose bit here. I'm going to put another little bit of tape around that. You can use just about anything. You can use plastic wrap. You can use aluminum foil. Works really well. So there we go. We've got our air layer little chamber there. So what's going to happen now over the next couple of weeks? New roots are going to start to grow from that wound that we made in the stem. And when we can see roots coming out and touching, then we're going to cut it off and pot it up. Then we'll have this top part as a rooted plant, and the base, because we've pruned it back, will start spreading and sprouting lots of new little shoots. So it'll be a nice bushy plant. So we'll come back and look at that again in a couple of weeks and see how it's progressing. So you can really do this with, honestly, just about anything. You could do it with a maple branch. You could do it with a Japanese maple. If you wanted to increase your Japanese maple collection, you could do it with vines. Work really well. Clematis vines, anything. Lots and lots of houseplants are done this way, and I think one of the most interesting things I've ever seen is we traveled years ago down to Homestead, Florida, which is south of Miami. It's where all the big tropical plant growers are in Florida, because it is virtually tropical climate. And they have groves of Ficus benjamina trees, big ones, 20 feet tall, 30 feet tall, 30 feet across, massive trees. And we drove by a field of them, and everywhere you looked there was these little balls of silver foil around the stems, because that's how they grow good size Ficus benjaminas and things like that in Florida. They air layer them off mature trees, and then when they've rooted enough, they cut them off, stick them in a 10-inch pot, let the roots fill out, then they've got 4 and 5 foot benjamina trees. And they're all done by cuttings. So it's really, really interesting. Also things like the Dracaenas. This is, well, Dracaena. It's also a cordyline. Depends what botanist you read. This is Chocolate Queen. It's a little rough looking, but it's got 2 old stems here. Same thing. Every node here has the ability to grow roots. So we could air layer these 2 top stems off. Again, interestingly enough, when they grow these in the Florida nurseries, they would import 3-foot long sticks as unrooted cuttings and root them. So they will root, but air layering gives you that little bit of added protections. Do we have any questions this week, Laura? I think our air layering lesson is done.
Nope, the only comment was that Cheryl thanks you for the gift tip. Santa brought her a hori-hori knife.
Oh, I love the hori-horis. You can't beat them. Mine's not sitting right there right now, but boy, what a great tool that is.
Just don't leave it around in the garden.
Just don't leave it lying around in the garden. That's I do that. Don't do that. Anyway, all right. That'll wrap it up for this week. Great news for us. Our Scotland trip is sold out. If you want to get on the waiting list for that, give Marjorie a shout at marjorie@masonhousegardens.com. But we do have a few spaces.
Paula had a question above that I missed.
Oh, sure. We'll go to that. Yeah. Let's
So
go to
keep
Paula's
going and
question,
I'll
yeah.
find the question.
We do have a few spaces left on our Chelsea Flower Show trip to England in May. This is going to be an outstanding trip. The gardens we've got booked are world class. I'm looking forward to seeing them in a bit different season than we usually do. Seeing them in what is basically their height of spring should be an amazing sight. We're going to see Graham Stewart Thomas's antique rose collection at Montesfont Abbey, and the big excitement actually is well, we're going to see the Pete Udoff Gardens at Hauser and Worth Art Gallery in Somerset, but we're also going to visit Tom Stewart Smith's garden, and he's one of the top landscape architects, designers in England right now. He'll be doing a feature garden at Chelsea, and we'll be at his own garden where he has created an amazing garden, but also he's created a living plant library of 1,200 more or less herbaceous perennials to show his clients what they grow like, so he can watch their growth habits and things, and we'll get to tour that. So if you want more information on that trip that's going in late May, give Marjorie a shout, Marjorie at masonhousegardens.com. And did you find the question, Laura?
I did. So Paula would like to know if there are any seeds that can be started for spring planting.
Boy, oh boy, yeah, you should be heavily into some seed starting. I'm a little bit behind. For the vegetable garden, you should have your onions on the go already. We usually start those in January. Flower garden, sweet peas should be getting potted, sown now. You do your sweet peas now, you'll have good chunky plants in 4-inch pots that you can harden off early and get planted in April. They love the cool weather. Also, yeah, you know, look at some of your anything perennial, anything that needs to be chilled should all be done. Annuals might be a bit early yet. You need to read the labels. If it says start seed 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost-free date, it's still a bit too early. But if you've got some slower ones that might say, you know, 12 to 14 weeks before frost-free date, those are the ones you should be looking at. Please do not start your tomatoes and cucumbers and things like that yet. It is way, way, way too early. You do not want to try to nurse 6-foot cucumber vines in your kitchen window. It's just not going to happen well. So we'll talk more about that in a bit later shows. We don't sow our tomato seed traditionally till April the 1st, just to give you an idea. So don't get too excited about getting a head start. They don't always work well. So with that, we'll leave it there. Hope you enjoyed our air layering. We'll look back at it in a couple of weeks, see what's going on. Other than that, we'll see you next week on Let's Get Growing Facebook Live.